Welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders, their backgrounds, their successes and challenges, and what really drives them forward. And today I'm really delighted to have with us Jon Parker, the CEO of Flyby Technology. And Jon, if you'd be kind enough initially just to introduce yourself, Flyby Technology, and what you do and how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Well, I'm Jon Parker, and really I'm the founder of Flyby Technology. The company seems to run itself because we've picked the right people, so it doesn't need too much of a guiding hand from me. Quite often, it just seems to do its own thing, and by selecting the right people, that's really helped. But I joined the RAF in 1985, and I was a fighter pilot in the RAF for 18 years. And I flew a lot of different fighters, the Buccaneer, the Tornado, the Hawk, and the Sea Harrier with the Navy off HMS Invincible and Ark Royal. After I left, though, I was seconded back into the orbit, really, of the military by being one of the designers of the new aircraft carrier, HMS Queen Elizabeth and Prince of Wales. I was the integration manager for F-35 and aviation into that platform, with a team of great people doing that. And that gave me a lot of design background. And then I was an airline pilot. Still am an airline pilot, actually. The day job is, it doesn't take up an awful lot of time as a full-time airline pilot, it seems. And so I'm able to balance the two. And that's because I've selected the right people in the business. So I can do a job that I love doing and run a business that I love at the same time. So, but there aren't enough hours in the day, some months, and there's always a price to pay for that sort of level of endeavour. But at the moment, I'm prepared to pay it. And then some of the work that we're doing in Flyby Technology is of such importance that we have to make the sacrifices.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you, Chris.
No, I'm just keen to know a little bit more about some of the things that you do at Flyby.
Yeah. Well, Flyby Technology is one of the big names in the drone industry in the UK. We are a training company predominantly, but also we are a consultancy for companies wishing to get into the drone sphere of influence. Most industries that are developing in the UK that are in growth will need drones in some way, shape or form. It can range from universities and archaeologists all the way up to quantity surveyors. But the sort of drones that we're working with at the moment are operating beyond visual line of sight. And we are supplying the pilots for the operation that's taking chemotherapy from the mainland of the UK to the Isle of Wight, for instance, in support of the NHS.
Wow.
So that's a project that's ongoing right now. Today, aircraft are flying, proving those routes and proving that that is a possible opportunity for the future for drones. It's in the early days, of course it is, but we're the guys that have been chosen to do the flying. And that's because all of our pilots are from manned aviation. So they're all ex-service pilots, either from the Army, the Royal Air Force or the Royal Navy. With the exception of a couple who have come from the civilian world, but they're at the top of their game in the civilian world, like an examiner from the from the Civil Aviation Authority is one of our pilots. And so, and also we're using our experience to further the environment, the ability to fly a drone in one continent while the pilot is sitting in a completely different continent, handing over to a third entity, a second pilot in a third continent. So we could be flying an aircraft in Turkey from Leeds and hand over control to somebody in Adelaide to carry on that flight in Turkey. And that's the sort of capability that we deal in. And we design aircraft, and we are in fact building aircraft at the moment in Turkey. And today I had 20 odd photographs sent of components that had just come out of our factory in Turkey that are fabricating the side sponsons in carbon fibre for an aircraft that we call Jackal 1. And there is a funny story as to why it's called Jackal. But that's because my Turkish is terrible. But that's the sort of thing that we do. We build aircraft, we consult to companies who want to get into this line of work, and we give them that first rung on the ladder, that first lift up to look over the wall at what is a great opportunity for both industry, humanitarian relief aid, and Britain, really, because we are one of the serious players in the world industry.
Incredible. I mean, it's just what incredible. What I love about doing these interviews is it's just fascinating businesses right on our doorstep. And who would who would know that you know, I didn't realise that you were so local to us. In fact, I think we're only probably about 1.5 miles between us at the moment. But and size, we mentioned before we started, but the size of the drones is quite significant, or some of them can be quite significant.
Yeah, our drones can morph in size as well. And one of the problems that is happening at the moment is people want to buy a drone from a catalogue. But if a drone is in a catalogue, it's already out of date. It's already obsolete because the technology is moving so quickly. I have 2 guys that just track our technology. That's all they do. They just check and look at the technology and report back to me. Anything that they see that's interesting and innovative, it might be something that we want to buy or improve upon and utilize ourselves. So if you buy a drone, it's already out of date. And that's the sort of customer problem that is a difficult problem to overcome, because you have to explain to your customer, this isn't something that's going to last for very long. It's a lot of money. And so the business model that you have to employ has to be sympathetic to that idea that you're selling something that's brand new, but really old.
Yes. Goodness.
And so, you know, you have to have an upgrade program and a good ideas club, and you have to work with the customer so that they're not buying a catalogue aircraft, they're buying a capability, and we supply the capability. Now, it might be an aircraft that's 2 years old that's perfectly okay for the requirement of the customer, or it might be something that we have to design and build and use a lot of innovative experience and pull together a different team to build that specific opportunity for the customer. So it's a very agile market. And if you're not keeping up with the trends and the technology, then you're going to get left behind. You get left behind, you will never catch up. Yeah.
Wow. I'm just so I have so many questions going on my mind, but it sounds fun. And all this it isn't even your day job. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's a day job for plenty of others.
So I guess I'm going to ask this question. It feels like there's an obvious answer, but I'm quite if there's any sort of finesse to it. But why did you why this business? Obviously, I can see the aviation background, but why get into drones specifically?
Well, I broke my neck in 2012, and I lost the use of my left arm. And an airline pilot that's one-handed hasn't got a very good career ahead of them. So thankfully, I had an operation which put it right, but it gave me a shock. It said to me that you're only as resilient as your drive to the shops. If you have an accident, you can lose your career. And as a single dad with 2 kids living at home, which is another full-time job, really, I needed to have some sort of safety net. So what could I do with 2 thumbs and my experience? The answer was drone flying. And then I looked at the market, as any good businessman would do, and say, right, where is my niche? Where is the opportunity? Where can I bring value? And the value is really, if you're in a gold rush, you don't dig holes, you sell shovels.
Yep.
Or show people where the gold is. That's where you make the money. And so that's what I adopted as a philosophy, and off we went. And training, I was an examiner and an instructor in the Royal Air Force. I was a weapons instructor on both the Hawk as an instructor on the training squadrons there, but also on the Sea Harrier. So I was a deep specialist in the Central Flying School way of doing business. And so it works for the Royal Air Force. It's certainly going to work in the drone industry, and it's proven to be so.
Wow, fantastic. And there must have been so many different issues, and you obviously mentioned that you work internationally and globally, not just the UK. But what are some of the key issues that you've had to overcome as you grew the business?
Public inertia, a resistance to change, because drones have got a bad reputation for all the wrong reasons. Many of them are not founded on fact. The press is very anti-drone, and therefore that's built up a nervousness in the regulator. Quite rightly, the regulator has to provide us with a set of regulations and a framework within which everybody flies, to make it as safe as it should be. But that can overswing at times, and for a modern economy that needs very fast growth and to attract huge investment, and this is one of those industries that needs that, you can't do so if there's no regulatory end game. There's no pathway to success in the short term. Now, the beauty of the UK is that our regulations are well written, well framed, but they are a little restrictive at the innovative end. At the end that we work at, we are the first. And so quite rightly, the regulator is nervous and needs to be confident in what we do. But at the same time, that's no place for a fast moving, innovative company where the technology is moving so quickly that it's harder to take the time to explain it than buy the next piece of kit. It takes longer to explain what this is than it is to buy the next one. Right.
Okay.
So you need to be in a space where you can use that to your advantage, and therefore you need to look at countries that are hungry for rapid growth in their industry, rather than a reliance on a safety model that doesn't quite fit. Now, the manned aviation safety model is superb, but it doesn't quite sit with the rate of innovation in a new industry. And so aviation has done very well by taking safety very slowly but relentlessly. We can't do that in the drone industry. And so I've had to go to where I can innovate and fly at the same time. And the answer to that is Turkey. That doesn't mean we stay in Turkey. We will always have a footprint in Turkey because it's such a vibrant society with nearly everybody going to university. Very bright, very funny. That was a big surprise. Their sense of humor is amazing. It has to be in this industry because of the crushing defeats when you realize that you've gone down the evolutionary rabbit hole, then have to backtrack. There's no way to turn around. But they're very resilient as well as a people. So I've really enjoyed working with the Turkish people. And we are networked at a very, very high level in Turkey, politically as well as intellectually, with the university system.
Wonderful. And what in your life, I mean, your career pre-business as well, but certainly business. What are some of the biggest things you've learned over time? I'm probably primarily business, but I'm really keen to look back into your whole career.
What have I learned? Well, the beauty of aviation is that you learn on every flight, and the process of learning shouldn't be by making mistakes. The one thing I've learned is that you shouldn't learn from your mistakes, because that's a natural process. Don't waste time sitting around analysing your mistakes. You do that automatically as a human. That's why we're still alive. But what we don't do is sit down and analyse our successes. Why was that a success? Okay. Why did it go well? How do I do more of that? How do I share that with my colleagues so that everybody can benefit? And was this an isolated point? Was it something that was a one-off and really I'm making a mistake from learning from it? And so you have to analyse everything that ever happened. So at the end of every day in Flyby, on the flying field as well as in our office, we say, what went well? Why did it go well? And how do I do more of that?
That's fascinating, actually. And the reason for me that's is interesting is we run, in what we do, we run quarterly planning sessions with our clients, because we believe long-term goals, short-term plan is the best way. But one of the things we always do right at the start is review successes for a slightly different reason, but it literally goes in that manner. What was the success? What do you put it down to? And what can you do more of or learn more to do it? But the root of that, John, was primarily because we found that entrepreneurial people spend a lot of time looking at what's yet to be done, and rarely do they actually look at their successes. So and we found it's really important that on a not necessarily frequent but regular basis, we do celebrate the success, because if all we're doing is looking at what we haven't achieved yet rather than what we have, it can get a little bit demoralizing. So we definitely do that, but it's really interesting and different spin on why we should be looking at our successes.
Yeah, and we're an innovation company as well, so we have to have different structures in the company. We can't have like would be described in the military as a chain of command. That doesn't work. We haven't got time for that. So we have a few rules in the company, one of which is no referring up. So
Right.
There's no upwardly delegating of work. I can't do this, you'll have to do it. There's no upwardly delegating. It's if a problem is found, that person owns the problem and they deal with it. And They do so in isolation. They don't talk to somebody at a different structural level. So, it's yours. It's on your desk, you deal with it. Now, that doesn't always work, because sometimes those people are new to the business or new to the industry and haven't got the depth of knowledge or experience to be able to be confident in their decisions. But the only way this works is if you hire big hitters, and if you hire big hitters, you have to expect some bruises.
Yes.
And so, mistakes are made, but we do give them a phrase that they can use, which is still empowering, but it also means that they're raising a little red flag, and that is, it is my intention to do, and then they trot out what it is that they've planned. And that is, I need some help here. I think this is the right way to go, but I'm not quite sure. And usually the answer is, that sounds great, enjoy that.
Right.
Or, oh, have you considered this? And you might want to look at this. It's never, oh, don't do that. It's, what do you think of this? How about you have a look here? And, oh, I'll send you a reference that might help you with that. And so that person is still in charge. They haven't referred it up. They've just sought a little bit of guidance, but in a reverse psychology way, they've used a term which is, it is my intention. If you don't say no, I'm going to do this. And that's the best way of operating for us.
Brilliant. It creates a little bit of shared responsibility, doesn't it? While the responsibility sits with the individual, there's a little bit of, can you just give me any?
Yeah. But then there's a just culture as well. So if somebody makes an error of judgment, or a process error or a human error, then there's no repercussion, because unless they've acted negligently or recklessly, then that's the human condition. We all make mistakes, and if I got £1 for every mistake I made, I wouldn't have to work for this lot. So
Yes.
we're fault tolerant. We expect mistakes, but remember, from every mistake comes a happy consequence. So all innovation is on the back of a mistake or a repurposing of an old idea. So nothing is thrown away, everything is useful. And at some point, that level of experience can be shared. Now, the problem with no upwardly delegating is knowing how to share out that user experience. So we do lose by having the no reverting up, referring up. But what we gain is that the people at the organizational level can concentrate on the innovation and the direction, and take that burden away from those that are innovating.
Yeah.
So that's the benefit of it. But there are some downsides, but we're prepared to pay for that.
Yeah. It's fascinating where working, and it feels like, because of the speed of change, this is the optimum way. So, obviously not the only way, but it's not the way. It's interesting to say that. I remember in my first business, we were growing quite fast. I wouldn't suggest we're growing at the same pace of technology and you guys, but we're growing quite fast. And the sort of motto I had to live by myself, being in quite an innovative part of the business, was I have to make a decision, because without decisions, there's no action and way forward. We can rarely know it's definitely the right decision. So by my action, I have to do my best to make it the right decision, if that makes sense. And ultimately, you still have an eye on, is it the right thing? But ultimately, if I work really, really hard and making it the right decision, I've got a better chance than anything of coming up with the outcome that we want.
Yeah, but one of the philosophy behind all this is that I need to devolve my authority to everybody.
Yeah.
So when somebody makes a decision, they're not making it as a compliance clerk or a compliance manager, they're making it as me. And so they have that authority to make the decision, and the decision is the one I would have made. They're just doing it.
Brilliant. Love it.
And so they can't be in trouble because it's my decision.
Love it.
So it's only if they act in, in a way that's prejudicial to the aims of the company on purpose, through recklessness or negligence or mean-spiritedness, which never happens because of the type of people that we employ.
The people you recruited. Makes perfect sense. Wonderful. So I'm interested to know who or what will have had the biggest influence on your career.
On my career, I would say the nature of the work that I've always done. It's always been high octane, high pace, high danger, high risk, huge reward for huge risk. And so I sit in chaos, and I'm very comfortable in chaos. I can sit with the kettle boiling, the Hoover on, the telly on, the radio on, and still concentrate. I'm used to that level of and two children in a house at the same time. I can live and operate to a high degree of effectiveness in that sensory polluted environment. And what that does, it means that when decisions need to be made, I have a clarity of thought, because I seem to be able to operate at a level of cognition that cuts through all of the noise and the chatter. And so things can be clearer to me than they wouldn't normally be. And that comes from operating with the Royal Navy on aircraft carriers. It is the most dangerous place on Earth, apart from the inside of a nuclear reactor. The next one is the deck of an aircraft carrier. And so operating at that level, in that, high vibration, high heat, high wind, the whole thing is sensory overload. And to be able to operate like that effectively and then sit down in an office and still think, yes, with lots of moving parts, which is what we deal with every day in Flyby, is a lot of things are changing all the time. And if they're not, why not? Because it's an innovation project. So if it isn't changing, we're making a mistake. So stop. Let's examine that. Why isn't it changing today?
Brilliant.
What have we missed?
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. The description of that environment. It's I can really sort of visualize how that happens and why that happens. Interestingly enough, I was feeling I have been inside a nuclear reactor building, so we're not inside the reactor itself. So we haven't exactly got anything in common, but that's interesting. So have you? I mean, I'm just fascinated to know if you've picked up any particular sayings or mottos that have you've operated or lived by. I would imagine you've already sort of highlighted a few ways of working that's quite different.
I seem to be able to make them up as I go along, to be honest. Little idioms and ways of working and philosophies. One of the things that has helped me is that ability to formulate a plan when it looks like it's like you're counting grains of shifting sand, but somehow I'll be able to weigh it and divide by the volume of one. I'll see the clear way, because that's how I've always had to operate. You know, everything's moving all the time on an aircraft carrier, and you've still got to go and hit something that's stationary somewhere.
I can see that clarity of thought is a major attribute that you have, and you needed to have over everything that you.
And confidence. You need to have a confident company.
Yep.
Confident in its people, confident in its decision making and its structures, but also its purpose.
Yes.
So if you haven't got a purpose, why have you got a business?
I like that one. You just I'm going to write that one down. If you haven't got a purpose, because I completely agree. One of the things we do a lot of work with clients is vision, values, and purpose. If we that should lend itself to everything we do, our destination, our marketing, our selection of team. If everything should be aligned to our values and our purpose. If it's not, typically we'll have more problems than we need to have.
We don't have mission statements. We just complete the mission.
Thank you. Love it. I love the simplicity. It's wonderful. But so we're clear: simplicity, but effectiveness.
Keep it simple, stupid, but do it highly effectively every time.
Wonderful. So, what would you say you've learned about yourself over obviously your career, but also in the business that you've created?
Flaws, fragility, insecurities. You know, if you're operating at this level and you're operating in this environment, it shines a torch on all of the dusty corners of your mind. People once said, have a clean life, and that's impossible at this level. It's impossible when you're operating like this. You know, you drop the ball at home all the time. If you're performing, something has to go. You're still a human.
Yep.
You might have been a fighter pilot, but you're a human fighter pilot, and there's plenty of dead ones. So, we're still humans, and reminding oneself of that is important. Thankfully, I remind myself of it every day. I make errors every day. Most people notice them. Sometimes they're polite enough not to mention it, but because we learn from our successes, not our mistakes, I seem to get away with most of them. Personal admin sometimes drops by. You know, you're looking at the big picture all the time, but the granularity can sometimes drift. And that can be frustrating, not for me, but for others around me who, did you get that email? Of course I did. And oh, you wanted me to reply? Okay, that bit's a different thing. Yeah, so you can see that, you need to manage yourself as well as managing the company, and sometimes, mission-focused compartmentalizer is really the bracket I fit into, and that's not a good thing sometimes. I have to ground myself sometimes and go, whoa, stop. Let's put the wooden wedges in to shore this up a little bit. And that you can get ahead of yourself. You can overstretch yourself a little bit. You get carried away with the excitement, and you haven't built the platform to spring off from quite as strongly as you thought you had.
Yeah, I think even fast moving, I like the phrase "slow down to speed up." And sometimes it's just knowing when, isn't it? Because sometimes it's speed up to speed up, but sometimes it is, okay, step back. Let's just think maybe we're getting ahead of where we need to be. And it's being able to call that, I think, is the challenge, isn't it? Is knowing. So I'm really, obviously, you're right at the front edge of some amazing technological advances. I'm keen to know what the future looks like for yourself and Flyby, and what challenges you might face as you move forward.
Well, Flyby was built to further the aims of the British drone industry. It now turns out that Flyby's role is spanning a few continents. Those continents are growing in number. Where does the company want to see itself in 5 years? Well, I don't think that's our gift to give. I think because of what we're doing and where we're doing it and the space we're operating in terms of helping save lives, rescuing people after natural disasters, moving food, swarm technologies, heavy lift of key components, connecting remote communities, vaccine support, vaccine delivery, blood test results, all of those sorts of things, making isolated communities less isolated. We're going to be saving lives. And I don't think we're in control of our own destiny now. I think we've lit the touch paper and we haven't stood back. So but chaos is great. We'll just manage the chaos when it comes. That's just what we have to do. So we can be victims of our own success, but at the same time, it's a new industry. Innovation is moving at such a pace, and the investor doesn't quite know where to put their money at the moment, and I can help them with that. But we don't want investors. We would quite happily just grow this organically until we get to the right formula for us. Now, collaboration is different to investment, obviously. So we're happy to collaborate, whether it's temporarily or at a functional level, or a spiritual level even, and just give advice to the right people to help them. We need competitors, otherwise you never improve. There's no point having our philosophies of what went well, why did it go well, unless there's a reason for that, apart from flight safety. In business terms, we need competitors, and we need highly effective and competent competitors. So if we can help people get to that level, I sound like a turkey voting for Christmas, but I need good competitors. Yeah,
no, I really get it. I think, and ultimately a market doesn't like a single dominant player anyway. So the market will encourage competition too. And, but no, it helps us keep sharp, doesn't it? It helps us keep.
Yeah, there's natural extinction events come by for business. And, we don't want to be under that asteroid, thanks. We're quite keen to share the love. It's a big enough industry. As a friend of mine once said, there's more than enough room for 2 butchers on the high street.
Absolutely.
But it's holding the right philosophies and keeping that which you hold dear at the front of everything. Why are we here? We're here to build drones that do good for people. And I like the word drone as well. One of the things that needs to get out there is we're not unmanned air vehicles. Whoever came up with that idea has not done us any service whatsoever. We're remotely piloted aircraft.
Yes, got you.
Okay, so later there will be unmanned air vehicles, and they'll have autonomy and decision-making tool sets within them that allow them to operate and make decisions of where to land, how to adapt missions. But we're nowhere close to that.
Yes.
And that's where innovative companies are spending a lot of their time. But the regulator, remember, has only just allowed us to fly 3 or 4 kilogram drones where we need to.
Yeah. To
be able to fly the sort of monsters that we're building, and I say monsters not because they're scary, but because they're huge.
They're big,
The ability to fly those is really too far away to let them fly autonomously. So the natural progression really is through a remotely piloted schema that allows, top quality, well-trained pilots, highly capable individuals. Doesn't mean they're ex-airline pilots or Air Force pilots. People that have flown any drone should be able to go through our training and step up into that role. And remember, where does the future lie? The future is airliners being flown remotely. That is the obvious logical step. And so if we can fly an aircraft in one continent while sitting in another, there's no reason why we can't fly the aeroplane from this continent to that one. There's no difference.
Yeah.
But of course, then you've got to get the public perception change, and that can only change through excellence, component production standards, engineering, airworthiness standards, and a safety culture and a just culture that I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
So if you've got all of those parts and you include training, then you'll be safe.
Yeah.
And so that is the logical step. So where everybody else is looking for autonomy, the obvious route to that is through flying the aircraft from the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't mean flying them like this all the time. Operating the aircraft is flying it. And
Yep.
so levels of automatic flight, as you scale up and down through those levels, that is an art form in itself. And knowing the appropriate mode to be in at a given stage of flight, or with a given unserviceability, and how the aircraft fails gracefully down through modes so that it still operates and completes the mission with the highest of safety standards. That is where the regulator needs us to get to, and we'll work with the regulator to make sure that we adopt any philosophies that they predicate, and we'll help them understand our problems and what we've seen and what we think is the next step. So sharing is a two-way sharing of information. It's working with the regulator that's so important at the moment.
I think that's going to be so valuable, isn't it? Is that because you're leading the technology, that you have that, hopefully maintain an ear of the regulator, because it's you need them to be in train with the pace, I guess, because it holds you back, I would imagine.
That's right, and they've got some excellent people in there, and they know what they're talking about as well. But at the same time, we're at the coalface with the new technology, and as I said, we can get to the next thing quicker than we can explain the last thing.
Yes, I love that. I love that. It must be you look a very relaxed man for working in a very fast-paced world.
Chaos.
Territory. Yeah, there goes the territory. I love it. Absolutely love it. Jon, it's been an absolute delight talking with you. There's so much more we could discuss. I've got a couple of last sort of final questions for you. And I'd love, with your permission, to come back. I often say in another year. I think it needs to be another 3 months just to see where you are. But just sort of in closing, what would you say from a business perspective? What would you say to anyone that was thinking of going into business right now?
Move to the north.
Great.
I would say take advantage of the Freeport system.
Yeah.
Go to an innovative place with lots of universities.
Yeah.
Like Leeds, technical universities.
Yeah.
Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool. And don't just recruit from one city. Try and have people from as wide a network as you can, and let them work as remotely as possible. But when you bring them together, it's intense innovation, because you can't innovate all of the time. You have to do it in innovative blocks, and then capitalize on the innovation, rest, recover and recuperate, and then go again. And you can't really do that if everybody's in the same room all the time. Eventually you get hackneyed ideas and you get burnout, and it just doesn't work that way. Innovation is a spontaneous activity, and not everybody is innovating all the time, and you might have to be patient. So the best innovators only innovate for just in 2 days a month.
Okay, yeah, that makes absolute sense. Yeah, I mean, that's enough intense activity, I would imagine, to keep you going for a reasonable period of time. If you're innovating all the time, then
And my job is not to come up with the best idea; it's to choose the best idea, and it's probably not going to be mine. Okay. Yeah, so that's what I would say to a business owner: is lose the emotional attachment to your own ideas, because your workforce will have much better ones than you've got. Yep. Your job is just to give them the tools that they need to do what they do. So recruit the best people, give them the tools they need to do the job, give them the freedom, and give them authority, your authority, to get it done. And then just sit back and just deal with how many windows are in the building, how many phones they need, and how many laptops they need. That's the sort of stuff you need to be dealing with, not the policy for the next product. Let that happen by itself.
Love it. That's absolutely in line with everything you've talked about today. So that makes perfect sense. And finally, I'm again interested to know your thoughts. What would be the best advice you could give to an 18-year-old you?
An 18-year-old me. join the military tomorrow.
Brilliant. I'm pretty sure I understand why and what and the reasons behind that. But yeah,
because what it gives you is something that nothing else can. There is no other replacement for that kind of training. Dedicated enforcement of standards, that's esprit de corps, that looking after each other, and decision-making processes and leadership. Even the most junior ranked person in the military is a far better leader than some of the FTSE 100 company execs.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. I've been lucky enough to be around one or two military people, and I can totally see why you would say that.
They walk into a room and the temperature goes up a degree and people relax. That's what you need.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Jon, I honestly could talk all afternoon with you. I really appreciate your time and absolutely fascinating insight into what you're doing and the fast pace that you're operating with and your philosophy on business and life in general. So thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, you're welcome. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.